My in-laws uninvited me from Christmas exactly 10 minutes after the confirmation email hit my inbox. They thought they could erase me from the family photo while keeping the $98,000 resort booking I paid for. But they forgot one crucial detail: I am the only one authorized to freeze the deposit. If they want me gone, I will disappear right off their invoice. Tonight, I am not just canceling a vacation. I am auditing their lives. My name is Harper Wainwright. At 34 years old, I have spent 7 years trying to shrink myself to fit the mold of the Winter Harbor elite. It is a town where acceptance is a currency I never seemed to have enough of. Despite my best efforts to be the perfect wife to Grant, I thought I could buy my way in. I thought if I solved their problems and funded their lifestyle, the Wainwrights would finally see me as one of their own. That is why I took my entire year-end performance bonus and booked the Summit Estate at Frostline Peaks Lodge. It cost $98,000. I paid for everything, from the lift passes to the private catering, framing it as a peace offering, a gift to bring the family together. The family group chat was alive with notifications all morning. They were discussing ski gear and dinner menus. I felt a surge of pride, thinking I had finally done it right. Then, a single message from my mother-in-law, Darlene, froze the screen. Harper isn't going. This is family business. The chat went dead silent. No one defended me. No one asked why. I waited for Grant to call. I waited for him to tell his mother that he would not go without his wife. Instead, a private message appeared on my screen from him. "Honey, please, don't make a big deal out of this. They are just stressed. He was not fighting for me. He was managing me." That was the moment the illusion shattered. I realized the cruelest detail of all. They had no intention of canceling the trip. They still intended to sleep in the beds I paid for, eat the food I ordered, and drink the wine I selected. They just wanted to crop me out of the photo. I walked into the kitchen and dialed the resort. I needed to know exactly where I stood. "I need to confirm the billing details for the Wainwright reservation," I said, my voice shaking slightly. The concierge pulled up the file. "Everything is fully prepaid. Mrs. Wainwright, the booking is under your name exclusively." "So," I asked, gripping the counter, "I am the sole financial guarantor." "Yes," the clerk replied, her voice helpful and oblivious to the bomb she was about to drop. "In fact, since you are the primary contract holder, you are the only one who has the authority to freeze or cancel the deposit. Is there a problem?" I hung up the phone. I looked at the towering Christmas tree in my living room, the one I had decorated to Darlene's exacting standards. The sadness evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp clarity. This was not going to be a holiday. It was going to be an audit. I stared at the darkened window, catching my own reflection. "If they want me to disappear," I whispered to the empty house, "I will disappear from their bill first." "You are being dramatic, Harper," Grant said, loosening his tie without looking me in the eye. He walked past me to the liquor cabinet, the ice clinking against the glass as he poured a double scotch. "Mom is just under a lot of pressure right now. You know how she gets about image." "Image?" I asked, my voice steady, though my pulse was hammering in my throat. "She uninvited me from a trip I paid for. Grant, a trip that cost $98,000. She didn't just crop me out of a photo, she erased me from the event while keeping my wallet in her pocket." "Stop throwing numbers around," he snapped, spinning around to face me. "If you really cared about this family, you would apologize to her. Keep the peace. Don't make me choose between my wife and my mother." Before I could respond to the absurdity of his request, my phone buzzed on the counter. It was Darlene. I answered on speaker, letting Grant hear every word. "Harper, dear." Her voice was dripping with that sickly sweet tone she always used when she wanted something, a stark contrast to the text she had sent earlier. "I hope Grant explained things to you. It is nothing personal. You just... well, you don't quite fit with our Christmas traditions. It is strictly a biological family thing this year. She paused, and the tone shifted slightly, becoming sharper, more urgent. By the way, the lodge booking is fully settled, right? No outstanding balances. It is fully paid, Darlene, I said, staring at Grant. Good, she chirped. We wouldn't want any awkwardness at check-in. She hung up before I could say another word. Almost immediately, a notification popped up on my laptop, which was open on the kitchen island. It was an email from my father-in-law. Frank. It was short, professional, and chilling. Harper, regarding the Frostline logistics, please transfer the administrative rights of the booking to Grant immediately. It is just for family convenience, so we can manage room assignments without bothering you. I stared at the screen. They did not care about my feelings. They were not worried about an awkward dinner conversation. They were terrified that I still held the leash. Why would Frank, a man who had never planned a vacation in his life and usually left the logistics to his secretary, suddenly care about administrative rights? Grant saw me reading the email and moved closer, his presence looming over me. Just do it, Harper. If you cancel this, you are not just ruining a holiday. You are destroying my future, my career, the family reputation. Your career? I asked, stepping back. It is a ski trip, Grant. How does a ski trip affect your standing at the firm? He blinked, flustered for a split second, his face flushing. It is complicated. It is about networking. Just transfer the booking and stop using the home Wi-Fi for heavy downloads. By the way, I changed the admin password to increase security. My stomach turned. He had locked me out of the router. He claimed it was for security, but I knew better. It was about control. He wanted to monitor my traffic, or perhaps prevent me from seeing what he was doing on the network. We need that asset secure, he muttered, pacing the kitchen floor, seemingly talking more to himself than to me. We can't have the escrow compromised. I froze. The word hung in the air like smoke. Escrow. I asked. Grant, it is a hotel reservation. Why would you call it an escrow? His eyes darted to mine, wide with sudden panic. I didn't say escrow. I said, escape. The winter escape. He was lying. I knew the lingo. Grant worked in finance, but he was sloppy when he was stressed. Escrow meant holding funds for a specific transaction. He didn't see Frostline Peaks as a resort. He saw it as a holding tank for money. I realized then that fighting him was dangerous. If I pushed too hard now, he would shut down completely. I needed him to think he had won. I took a deep breath and let my shoulders slump, forcing a look of defeat onto my face. You are right, I said softly, looking down at my hands. I am sorry, Grant. I am just hurt, but I won't do anything impulsive. I will transfer the booking to you in the morning. I just need to sleep on it. The tension drained from his shoulders instantly. He walked over and kissed my forehead, his relief palpable. Good girl. I knew you would be reasonable. He went to bed early, confident that he had subdued me. I waited until I heard the heavy, rhythmic breathing of deep sleep coming from the bedroom. I sat down at my laptop and disconnected from the house Wi-Fi, tethering to my phone's hotspot to bypass his security measures. I created a dummy PDF file titled Holiday Transfer Plan Final inside. I embedded a silent tracking pixel, a digital watermark that would log the IP address, location, and time of anyone who opened it. I left the file on the shared desktop screen, right where he would see it if he got curious. Then I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, waiting to see who would take the bait. The morning sun hit the screen of my laptop, but the light did not reach the cold pit in my stomach. I called the guest services line at Frostline Peaks Lodge, keeping my voice level and professional. I requested a full copy of the service contract associated with my reservation number. Within minutes, the document arrived in my inbox. I scanned the fine print, my eyes hunting for leverage. I found it in Clause 4.2 regarding cancellations and refunds. Refunds will only be issued to the original source of payment. I read aloud to the empty room. In the event of suspected fraudulent activity, the resort reserves the right to hold funds pending an internal investigation. That was the lock. Now I needed the key. I logged into my credit card portal to review the transaction details. I expected to see the merchant listed as Frostline Peaks Lodge. I did not. The charge for $98,000 was billed to a third-party merchant named Alpine Guest Services. It sounded legitimate enough, perhaps a parent company or a booking agent, but something felt off. I copied the name and ran a search. There was no website, no marketing, no reviews. The registered business address was not a corporate office in Colorado. It was a rental mailbox inside a shipping store in Delaware. I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the winter weather. I went to the filing cabinet in Grant's home office. He was sloppy with his personal paperwork, arrogant enough to believe I would never look. I pulled his most recent tax files and bank correspondence. I found a deposit slip from 3 weeks ago, buried under a stack of car lease papers. It was a check for exactly $98,000, labeled simply as consulting fees. The memory hit me like a physical blow. Months ago, when we started planning this trip, I had offered to let Grant pay. He had refused, almost aggressively. "No, babe. You should put it on your card," he had insisted, his eyes wide and eager. "Think of the points, the status upgrades you'll get. I'll just handle the other expenses." He didn't care about points. He needed the paper trail to originate from me. I picked up my phone and dialed the number listed for Alpine Guest Services on my bank statement. It rang 4 times before a woman answered. Her voice was flat, mechanical. "Alpine Services. How may I direct your call?" "Hi," I said, adopting a confused tone. "I'm reviewing an invoice for a consulting fee, and I need to verify your employer identification number for my tax records." There was a pause, a long, heavy silence. "We aren't authorized to give that out over the phone," she stammered, the professional facade cracking instantly. "I need to check with a manager." The line went dead. She hung up. I sat back, the pieces falling into place with terrifying precision. My mother-in-law, Darlene, sat on the board of the Wainwright Family Heritage Fund. I knew they were trying to close a massive real estate deal before the fiscal year ended, a deal that required them to show specific liquidity and operational expenses. They needed to move money. The $98,000 wasn't for a vacation. It was a wash. Grant received the consulting money from the family pot likely off the books, and I paid it back into their shell company, Alpine, under the guise of a luxury trip. It created a clean, verifiable receipt for a legitimate service that would never actually be rendered to the person paying for it. "Oh my God," I whispered, my hand covering my mouth. "It's a round-trip transaction." That was why they had to uninvite me. If I went on the trip, I might talk to the front desk. I might ask for an itemized bill at checkout and realize the money never went to the resort. But to the middleman, they needed my clean credit history to anchor the purchase. But they needed my physical absence to hide the fraud. I wasn't just an unwanted daughter-in-law. I was a laundering instrument. They wanted a silent partner. They were about to get a hostile witness. I opened the chat window with the resort's fraud department. I didn't ask for a refund. I didn't ask to cancel. I typed a single, decisive sentence that I knew would trigger every alarm in their system. "I am the cardholder for the reservation under Wainwright, and I want to place a verification flag on this booking because I suspect identity theft activity." I hit send. The trap was set. Now. I just had to wait for the rats to realize the cheese was poisoned. Grant transformed overnight. The man who had dismissed my feelings as drama was suddenly making wild mushroom risotto and pouring expensive wine. He presented me with a velvet box containing a diamond tennis bracelet, his smile tight and practiced. "I have been thinking," Grant said, sliding the bracelet onto my wrist, his thumb rubbing the pulse point a little too hard. After the family trip, just us. Maybe St. Lucia in February. We need to reconnect. He paused, looking deep into my eyes. I just need you to sign that transfer document tonight, babe, so I can get the logistics off our plate and focus on us. I smiled back, a mirror of his performance. Of course, Grant, I just want us to be happy. I did not tell him that earlier that afternoon. My phone had prompted me to re-enter my password for 3 different banking apps. Someone had attempted a password reset using the backup email address I created years ago, an address only Grant knew. He was not just trying to take the vacation. He was trying to seize the digital keys to my life. I did not scream. I did not change the passwords again, which would have tipped him off. Instead, I went to the home office and plugged a new USB charger into the wall outlet facing his desk. It was not a charger. It was a high-definition camera with a motion sensor. I also accessed the router settings through a backdoor I had established before he changed the admin password, configuring it to mirror all traffic logs to a hidden partition on my external hard drive. Here is the authorization, I said later that evening, handing him a crisp sheet of paper. I had signed it with a flourish. I had filled in my name and the reservation number. However, I had intentionally left the line designated for refund authority completely blank. To a casual observer, it looked like total capitulation. To a lawyer, it was a piece of paper that gave him permission to check in, but zero power to touch the money. Grant scanned it, his eyes glossing over the missing detail. Perfect. Thank you. Honey. An hour later, the doorbell rang. It was Darlene. She was holding a tin of Danish butter cookies, wearing a cashmere coat that cost more than my first car. She did not take off her shoes. She walked straight into the living room, her eyes darting immediately to my open laptop on the coffee table. I just wanted to drop these off, she said, her voice smooth. A little peace offering. She took a step closer to the computer. You are still working at Northbridge Risk and Integrity, aren't you, dear? Yes, I replied, closing the laptop lid firmly. Why do you ask? Oh, no reason. She smiled, a thin, predatory expression. Just thinking about how much integrity matters in your line of work. She left 10 minutes later. The phone rang at 4 o'clock. It was the director of human resources at Northbridge. Harper, the director said, her tone serious. We received an anonymous whistleblower complaint alleging that you have been using company software to access private credit reports for personal use. This is a termination-level offense. I felt the blood drain from my face, but my mind sharpened. They were not just trying to take the money. They were trying to nuke my credibility so that if I tried to report them, I would look like a disgruntled, unethical former employee. I understand the gravity of the accusation, I said, my voice steady, freezing the panic in my chest. However, I work from a secured server. I want you to pull the MAC address of the device that made those queries and cross-reference it with my physical login logs. I also suggest you check the IP address of the claimant. I think you will find the call is coming from inside the house, so to speak. We will investigate, the director said, sounding uncertain. Please do, I said. I have my own network traffic logs timestamped for the last 48 hours to corroborate my location. I hung up. I sat in the darkening room, watching the snow fall. They were playing dirty. That night, I lay in bed feigning sleep, listening to Grant move through the house. I waited until silence returned. Then I pulled up the feed from the hidden camera on my phone. The screen glowed in the dark. Grant was in the office. He was not on the computer. He was at the printer. He printed a single page. He did not put it in a folder. He folded it into a tiny square and taped it to the underside of the bottom drawer of his desk. It was a dead drop. He was hiding something physically, right here in our home. I watched him on the small screen, a stranger in pajama bottoms, and realized the man I married was gone. In his place was a conspirator, and he had no idea that the walls were watching him. I waited until Grant left for work, the tires of his Audi crunching on the gravel driveway. As soon as the house was silent, I logged onto the county clerk's public record database. I needed to see the legal dissolve of his first marriage to Veronica Rusk. I typed in the case number I had found years ago in an old box of his things. The screen refreshed, and the blood ran cold in my veins. The status of the divorce filing was not finalized. It was dismissed. "He is still married," I whispered to the humming refrigerator. I ran to our bedroom and pulled our marriage certificate from the fireproof box in the closet. I took a jeweler's loupe from my jewelry drawer and examined the notary stamp. The lines were too perfect, the ink too flat. It was not a wet signature. It was a high-resolution color scan printed onto heavy bond paper. I was not looking at a legal document. I was looking at a forgery. My hands shook, but not from fear. I felt a cold, surgical rage taking over. I went to the guest room closet, pulled back the rug, and opened the small floor safe Grant had installed years ago. He had given me the key on our first anniversary as a gesture of total transparency, a joke because he knew I never cared about his old coin collection. I ignored the coins. I reached into the back, feeling for the taped envelope I had seen him hide in the video feed. It was not there. He had moved it, but in his haste, he had dislodged a thin, blue passport that had fallen behind the lining. I opened it. The photo was Grant, younger, with less gray at the temples. But the name printed next to the photo was not Grant Wainwright. It was Gavin Lorne. Underneath the passport lay a single sheet of paper titled Liability Proxies. It was a spreadsheet. At the top of the list was a column labeled Primary Clean Credit Anchor. My name, Harper Wainwright, was the only entry. I was not a wife. I was not a partner. I was a human shield for debt. I was a clean credit score harvested to insulate a man named Gavin Lorne from financial ruin. I dialed Elise Marrow, a shark of an attorney at Marrow and Slate who owed me a favor from my days in risk assessment. I put the phone on speaker and laid the documents out on the floor like tarot cards. "Elise, I am looking at a passport for a man who does not exist and a marriage license that might be fake," I said, my voice flat. "If I am not legally his wife, do I have any standing to sue for the $98,000? "Harper, listen to me," Elise said, her voice sharp and authoritative. "If the marriage is void, the fraud is actually easier to prove. He enticed you into a financial contract under false pretenses, but you cannot confront him one-on-one. If he is running a dual identity scheme, he is dangerous. He will gaslight you, or he will disappear." "He is already trying to make me disappear," I said. "He wants me out of the picture for Christmas so they can move the money." "Then you need to change the venue," Elise advised. "Do not let him corner you in private. You need a confession, Harper, and you need it recorded, in our state, if there is a reasonable expectation that the conversation is not private, or if one party consents to the recording in a public setting. It is admissible. You need witnesses." I looked at the passport again. Gavin Lorne. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. "I am going to invite them over," I told Elise. "All of them. Darlene, Frank, Grant. I will tell them I am signing over the booking. I will tell them I am surrendering." "You are setting a trap," Elise noted. "No," I corrected her, staring at the snow piling up against the window. "I am hosting a party. If they want to treat me like an outsider, fine. But they are going to find out that the outsider is the one holding the keys." I hung up the phone. I picked up the fake marriage license and slid it back into the box. I placed the passport back in the safe exactly as I found it. I needed them to feel safe. I needed them to walk into my house thinking they had won, thinking I was just the foolish, heartbroken wife desperate to please the wealthy in-laws. I picked up my phone. It was time to set the first stage of the trap. I sent the message to the family group chat with the precision of a sniper. "I understand. I will not go, but I want everything to be smooth for the family. Let's meet to finalize the transfer details." I did not invite them to my home yet. That was for the finale. Instead, I suggested the Rusty Anchor, a 24-hour diner near the highway gas station. It was neutral ground, public enough to prevent a scene, but noisy enough to mask a recording device. Most importantly, I knew exactly where their security cameras were positioned. I arrived 10 minutes early and chose a booth by the window. I ordered black coffee and waited. I expected Darlene to sweep in with her faux sympathy, or perhaps Grant with his rehearsed aggression. Instead, the door opened, and Veronica Rusk walked in. Grant's ex-wife looked nothing like the photos I had seen. She looked tired. Her designer coat was slightly frayed at the cuffs, and her eyes darted around the room nervously before landing on me. She slid into the booth opposite me without a greeting. "Darlene couldn't make it," Veronica said, her voice raspy. "She sent me to collect the paperwork." "Interesting," I replied, keeping my hands visible on the table. "I didn't realize you were still part of the family payroll." "I am not here to fight, Harper," she snapped, leaning in closer. "I am here to tell you to sign the damn papers and walk away. You have no idea what you are stepping into." "I think I do," I said softly. "I think I am stepping into a $98,000 money laundering scheme disguised as a ski trip." Veronica flinched. It was a micro-reaction, a tightening of the jaw. But it was enough. "It is not just a scheme," she hissed, lowering her voice to a whisper. "Darlene uses these vacations to legitimize fund assets before the fiscal audit. It is standard operating procedure. But Grant is different. He uses you. Uses me how," I pressed, my heart pounding against my ribs. "He uses you to wash the trail," she said, her eyes wide and intense. "You are the clean face, the fresh credit. He ruins you, and then he moves on. Why do you think he never legally divorced me? Because as long as he is married to me on paper in Nevada, his debts with you are complicated to enforce." She was unraveling. I needed one more piece. I needed the destination. "So where does the money go?" "Veronica," I asked, feigning innocence. "If Alpine Guest Services is fake, where does the refund go if I sign this transfer?" "It goes to the holding account, obviously," she muttered, distracted by a waitress passing by. "It bounces from Alpine straight to Lakeshore Federal. Account ending in 7714. She stopped. Her hand flew to her mouth. She realized instantly that she had given me the combination to the safe. "Lakeshore Federal," I repeated, memorizing the numbers. 7714. "Thank you. Veronica." "You forget that number," she threatened, her voice trembling now. "You forget you ever heard it. Do not poke the bear. Harper, they will crush you. They have lawyers. They have connections. You are just a temporary inconvenience to them." I picked up my purse. The voice recorder app on my phone had been running since I parked the car. "I don't need them to like me. Veronica," I said, standing up and throwing a $20 bill on the table. "I don't need their mercy. I just needed them to speak." "Where are you going?" she demanded, half rising from her seat. "To finish this," I said. "Tell Darlene I will see everyone at dinner tonight, and tell Grant to wear a tie. It is going to be a formal occasion." I walked out into the cold winter air. I had the bank name, I had the account number, and I had the testimony of a co-conspirator. I called Elise as I unlocked my car. "I have the account number," I told her. "Lakeshore Federal. Get the subpoena ready." The email from Northbridge arrived at 6 in the morning. It was a disciplinary summons, rescheduled for tomorrow. The wording was vague but lethal. They cited a severe data breach and implied that my termination was a formality. Grant saw the notification on my phone screen. He did not look surprised. He looked opportunistic. "Harper, listen to me," he said, cornering me in the kitchen, his voice low and urgent. "I know people on the board. I can make this go away. I can fix HR for you. But you have to help me help you. Just sign the booking transfer. If you show you are cooperative, I can pull some strings." It was a shakedown. He was trading my career for his money laundering vehicle. I don't know what to do. Grant, I stammered, burying my face in my hands. I am so scared. I sat down at the laptop, making sure he was watching over my shoulder. I opened a cloud folder and clicked on a file named Holiday Transfer Plan. Is this it? I asked, my voice trembling. Is this what you need? Yes, he said, his eyes hungry. Just leave it there. Go lay down. You look exhausted. I went to the bedroom, but I did not sleep. I watched the monitor of my hidden camera. At 2 a.m, Grant crept into the office. He did not email the file. He inserted a USB drive and dragged the document onto it. My phone vibrated under my pillow. The digital watermark had triggered. It logged the exact time, the IP address of our home router, and the unique device ID of the USB drive. By 10 o'clock the next morning, the trap snapped shut. Tessa Rowe, my friend and the head of internal audit at Northbridge, forwarded me an email that had been sent to the entire board from an anonymous account. The subject line was evidence of misconduct. Attached was the Holiday Transfer Plan file. They were trying to frame me. They wanted it to look like I was leaking sensitive financial structures to external parties. But they were arrogant. They had not checked the metadata. I called Tessa immediately. Look at the creation timestamp, I told her. That file was created yesterday at 4 p.m. My corporate access was revoked 2 days ago. I could not have generated that file on the company server. It came from an external source. It came from my home IP. I see it, Tessa said, her voice sharp with realization. This isn't a leak. It is a plant. Harper, someone is trying to execute a digital hit on you. I know, I said. I am sending you the router logs and the watermark report. I need you to hold this as a chain of evidence. I forwarded everything to Elise as well. The noose was tightening, but not around my neck. When Grant came home that evening, the air was thick with tension. He thought I was finished. He thought I was weeping over a lost career. He slammed his briefcase on the counter. Did you sign it? He demanded, no longer pretending to care about my feelings. I need to read it again, I whispered, clutching my robe. Read it, he roared, slamming his hand on the marble island. There is nothing to read. You are drowning. Harper, I am the only life raft you have. Shut up and sign the damn paper. His face was twisted, ugly with greed and desperation. The charming husband was dead. The panic of a criminal was all that remained. I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt absolutely nothing. Okay, I said, my voice eerily calm. I will handle it tonight. I walked away. I was not going to sign a transfer. If they wanted to paint me as a criminal, I was going to show them exactly what criminal evidence looked like. I called Frostline Peaks Lodge from my car, watching the gray sky threaten snow. I need to place a fraud hold on reservation number 4829. I told the security officer on the line. Do not cancel the booking, just freeze it. No name changes, no payment method updates. If anyone tries to modify it, I want the system to flag it as a security breach. Consider it done. Mrs. Wainwright? The officer replied. The file is locked. Next, I sent a certified digital notice to the email address listed for Alpine Guest Services. I demanded proof of business registration and tax compliance within 24 hours. The response was immediate silence. No auto reply, no denial. Just the vacuum of a shell company holding its breath, hoping I would go away. They are spooked, Elise told me when I called her. I have the emergency injunction drafted for the Lakeshore Federal account ending in 7714. We just need the trigger event. We need them to admit they control it. They will, I said, tonight. I set the stage carefully. I sent a message to the family group chat inviting everyone for a pre-Christmas reconciliation dinner. I called it a peace offering. I called it a chance to sign the transfer papers and say goodbye properly. But I was not just inviting family. I texted Tessa, my ally from Northbridge Audit, and asked her to come. Elise also sent a man named David, a forensic financial investigator who would pose as my college friend passing through town. By 7 o'clock, the house smelled of rosemary and roasted lamb. Darlene arrived first. She swept in with a stiff, benevolent smile, wearing a fur coat that probably cost more than my severance package. "Harper, darling," she cooed, offering a cold cheek. "So glad you came to your senses. It is best for everyone." Frank followed, carrying a bottle of vintage Cabernet. He looked relieved, like a man who thought he had dodged a bullet. Grant was the last to enter the living room. He was performing the role of the century. He hugged me from behind, kissing my neck in front of his parents. "I am proud of you, babe," he whispered, loud enough for them to hear. "We are going to get through this." I led them to the dining table. In the center, instead of a centerpiece, I had placed a large manila envelope. Inside was the resort contract, the printed refund policy, and the transfer authorization form unsigned. "I have everything ready," I said, gesturing to the envelope. "I just want to make sure we are all on the same page before I sign." I walked over to the sideboard and casually adjusted the vase of flowers. Hidden behind it, my phone was recording. David and Tessa sat on the sofa, drinks in hand, looking like polite guests but watching with the eyes of sharks. "Who are your friends?" Frank asked, eyeing David suspiciously. "Just some old friends stopping by for a drink," I said, pouring wine. "They won't stay for dinner. They are just here to witness the holiday cheer." Outside, the first flakes of the storm began to drift past the window, settling on the frozen ground. Inside, the warmth was artificial, and the air was tight with anticipation. They thought they were here to collect a prize. They did not realize they were sitting inside a steel cage, and I had just locked the door. I took a sip of water, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make them uncomfortable. I looked at the unsigned papers on the table, then up at Darlene. "Since I am not going," I said, keeping my voice soft and submissive, "I want to transfer the booking rights. I want the family to be comfortable." Darlene did not wait. She slid the pen across the mahogany table, her eyes glittering with a mix of triumph and greed. "That is sensible, dear," she said, tapping a manicured fingernail on the signature line. "Just sign there. And make sure you check the box that authorizes the refund recipient to be changed. We need to route any potential credits back to the family fund immediately." The trap clicked. "Which fund?" Tessa asked from the end of the table. Her voice was not the voice of a casual dinner guest. It was the voice of a lead auditor. "What is the tax ID number for that entity? Is it a domestic trust or an offshore holding?" Darlene froze, her hand hovering over the paper. She blinked, turning to look at Tessa with disdain. "I beg your pardon, that is private financial information." "It is relevant if you are asking Harper to sign a liability waiver," Tessa replied, leaning forward. "She needs to know who the counterparty is." Grant jumped in, sensing his mother was floundering. "It is just standard procedure. Tessa, we need to align the billing with Alpine Guest Services to keep the books clean." I widened my eyes, feigning total confusion. "Alpine Guest Services?" I asked, looking directly at my husband. "Grant, I booked the room directly with Frostline Peaks. I never mentioned a third-party company to you. How do you know that name, and how do you know it by heart?" Grant went pale. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He realized too late that he had just revealed intimate knowledge of a transaction he was supposedly not involved in. I saw it on the credit card statement," he stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. "No, you didn't," I said coldly. "The statement just says the name. It doesn't explain their billing structure. You know them because you are them." Frank slammed his wine glass down. Red wine sloshed onto the white tablecloth like a bloodstain. "Enough of this interrogation," Frank shouted, his face turning a dangerous shade of purple. "Sign the damn paper. Harper, if you don't release that booking, You are going to ruin the asset transfer strategy before the fiscal year ends. Do you have any idea how much tax liability we are facing if that money doesn't move tonight? So it is not a vacation, I said, locking eyes with my father-in-law. It is a movement of assets. Before Frank could answer, the front door opened. I had not locked it. Veronica walked into the dining room. She was not there to help me. Darlene had played her own card. I asked Veronica to join us, Darlene said, her confidence returning as she smirked at me. I thought having Grant's legal wife present might help clarify your position in this family. Harper, you are just a guest here. She is the reality. The room went deadly quiet. They expected me to crumble. They expected the mistress label to break me. I stood up slowly. I looked at Veronica, who was refusing to meet my eyes, and then I turned my gaze to Grant. His legal wife, I asked, my voice cutting through the tension like a razor. Which husband are we talking about? Darlene. Are we talking about Grant Wainwright, or are we talking about Gavin Lorne? The color drained from Grant's face so fast he looked like a corpse. Darlene dropped her fork. It clattered loudly against the china. How? Grant whispered, his voice shaking. How do you know that name? I know about the passport in the floor safe. I said, relentless. I know about the dismissed divorce. And I know about the liability proxies list where I am just a clean credit score for you to harvest. You didn't marry me. Grant. You recruited me. Panic overtook him. Grant lunged across the table, his hand clawing for the envelope containing the evidence and the unsigned transfer. Give me that, he screamed. I didn't move. I simply tapped the screen of my phone, which was lying next to the flower vase. Elise, did you get that? I asked loudly. I did. Elise's voice boomed from the speakerphone, crisp and authoritative. I have recorded a verbal confession regarding the asset transfer scheme, and I have audio evidence of an attempted physical altercation. Mr. Wainwright, I advise you to sit down. The police are already on their way to execute a search warrant. Grant froze, his hand inches from the envelope. He looked at me, and for the first time, he saw the wall he had run into. Sit down, Gavin, I said. Dinner isn't over. Elise's voice on the speakerphone was not loud, but it carried the weight of a gavel strike. I am officially serving notice of a pending lawsuit regarding identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial deception involving the Alpine Guest Services accounts and the Lakeshore Federal account ending in 7714. Elise announced, We have also flagged the booking at Frostline Peaks as a fraudulent transaction. The color drained from Frank's face. He looked at the phone as if it were a bomb. I reached into the envelope and pulled out the final email I had received from the resort just before dinner. I turned the screen toward them. The subject line read, Urgent Security Freeze. The booking is frozen, I said, my voice steady. The $98,000 is currently being held by the fraud department of the resort. It cannot be transferred. It cannot be refunded to your shell company. It can only be returned to the original verified source, which is my personal account. And since I have flagged it as theft, they are legally obligated to hold it until the investigation is complete. You ruined Christmas, Grant screamed, his face twisting into a mask of pure ugliness. You destroyed everything because you are too selfish to just help the family. No, I replied, looking him dead in the eye. I just canceled the privileges of the people who tried to cancel me. Tessa stood up then. She placed her tablet on the table, the screen facing Grant. On it was a live video feed of the legal counsel for Northbridge Risk and Integrity. We have reviewed the metadata provided by Ms. Wainwright and the independent audit from her home router, Tessa said, her tone clinical. The file sent to the board was created and uploaded from this location after Harper's credentials were revoked. The digital watermark confirms it was copied to a USB drive with the serial number matching the one currently plugged into your home desktop. Grant, we are dropping the investigation into Harper and opening a file on external corporate espionage. Frank tried to pivot. He pulled out his checkbook, his hands shaking. "Harper, listen, we can fix this. How much? How much do you want to sign the release? 200,000, half a million?" Darlene started to cry, a shrill, theatrical sound. "We are family. How can you do this to us? We took you in." "Save it." Elise's voice cut in again. "I have just filed an ex parte motion for an emergency freeze on all associated assets to preserve evidence. The court order is being processed as we speak." The room felt like it was shrinking. Then, the final domino fell. Veronica, realizing the ship was sinking and she was the only one without a life vest, stood up. She pulled her phone out and unlocked it. "I am not going to jail for you people," Veronica said, her voice trembling. She looked at me. "I have the texts. I have the emails from Darlene instructing me to pressure you. I have the receipts where Grant paid me to pose as his wife for the bank loan applications. I will give you everything if you keep my name out of the lawsuit." "You traitorous little witch!" Darlene shrieked, lunging across the table. But Frank held her back. I played my last card. I slid the copy of the liability proxies list across the table. "I know why you uninvited me," I said. "You didn't just want me gone because I didn't fit in. You needed me to be the primary clean credit anchor. You needed my name on the transaction to legitimize the flow of dirty money, but you needed me physically absent so I couldn't stop the refund diversion before the year ended. You wanted my credit score, but you didn't want my eyes." The silence that followed was total. The resort had the money. The bank had the fraud alert. My company had the proof of Grant's sabotage. The family had lost control of the only clean channel they had left. I took the pen Darlene had tried to force into my hand. I did not sign the transfer. Instead, I signed the bottom of a document Elise had prepared for me, a formal request for legal separation and a demand for the immediate dissolution of all financial entanglements. "I am leaving now," I said. "You can keep the dinner. It is the only thing you are going to get for free this year." I walked to the door. Grant did not follow me. He was slumped in his chair, watching his father scream into a phone that no one was answering. I stepped out onto the porch. The snow was falling heavily now, blanketing the driveway in white. The air was freezing. But for the first time in 7 years, I felt warm. I walked to my car, leaving the lights of the house behind me. They were trapped in a prison of their own making, frozen out of their accounts, their reputation, and their lies. I drove away into the silent night, finally, perfectly free. Thank you so much for listening to my story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from, so please leave a comment below with your city or country, and let's share our thoughts on this family's downfall. If you enjoyed seeing Harper take back her power, please subscribe to the Mia Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach even more people.